O Lover, O Death, or a tragic account of the life of the infinite woman in 1950, in 1850, in 2500 BCE, or in this one heroine, Edison Marshall has created every woman with her natural gifts of beauty, passion, and power, or against the dispersed, contingent, and multiple existences of actual women, mythical thought opposed the eternal feminine, unique and changeless. If the definition provided for this concept is contradicted by the behavior of flesh and blood women, it is the latter who are wrong, or Lilith, Lucia Riley, Callie, Lola Montero, Eve, Lola Montez, and Eliza Gilbert in the garden, in the sea, in the forest, in the mine pit, in the grave. Or, I am incapable of conceiving infinity, and yet I do not accept finity. I want this adventure that is the context of my life to go on without end. Each of us is a mirror to his own world. What scene would you choose? Out of sight of land, I lost sight of the landmarks behind me and before. I had no sense of forward movement. The sea was all around me when I went to sleep. And when I wakened, it changed with every least change of light and wind, but we remained a rocking, rolling island, moored amid its storms, calms, currents, and rolling waves. The clock of my heart kept ticking, but I did not look or listen. The moonlight showed us the form and face of Callie under a stone cowl. She had 4 arms, each with a red-palmed hand. Her eyes were red, and her tongue and face and breasts were stained with blood. Her teeth were pointed fangs, and around her neck was a string of skulls, and around her waist a girdle of twisted snakes. A light that I had held slowly burned down. I could not see by it anymore and began to doubt what it had shown me before. It was nothing like the sun, my bleak heart told me. It was an artificial light. Again, we were in the shadow and soon floating into a heavy growth of moss and water grasses. Let me know the taste of the fruit of evil that will fall into my hands when my soul is lost. See, I lie low in the rank, wet weed. I dared not look into the bleak mirrors. There came a creeping, golden fawn. The sides of the shaft leaned inward slowly and pitched down. The derrick gave way and fell in twisted ruin, and my soul went from me. I thought it was the last laugh, and no one born could ever laugh again. The Infinite Woman. As a starting point for his story, Mr. Marshall has taken the life of the great dancer and courtesan, Lola Montez. His vigor, imagination, and deep insight have departed from and transformed the facts. The Infinite Woman has overtones of philosophy and deep understanding of the dark and the golden in the souls of women and of the men who mold them and are molded by them. 1. Today I was wildly alive in defiance of death. I felt as though I were speaking for all women. I had not known the words would come that free. In the cheap, dim mirror in my room, I could hardly recognize Lola. I stopped putting on airs. Women have been taught to bow down to men, but I never will. I did not want to be kissed by them, and their conversation was crushingly dull. Once more, I was aware of their endless tug of war. I was not tired in the least, and had always taken pride in my physical stamina. I could not dance consistently well enough to win fame and fortune. I did not know what I had expected. I was still the bestower of beauty, the custodian of the mysteries, the priestess in the circle of stones. Instantly, I was reassured. I did not want him to love me in vain. I must make a polite answer and stay out of trouble. If I married you, loving you as I do, I wouldn't be free. I looked quickly in the other direction. I could not marry again. What did I think of him? I conceived him through imagination and reverie, not through thought. I could write him a letter. Trying to break out of a gray mist of feeling, I went to look in the mirror. I found myself more a woman than an artist. The web was being woven and I could not yet discern its design. I looked at the moon and tried to be reasonable. I echoed. I wanted it to live in my body and brain. I was listening intently. 2. I felt hardly any surprise at this interlude and no dismay. I had said goodbye. I had been wounded, but was again whole. I was too happy to weep. I had dwelt upon the distance. I stood where I was. I wanted to take dancing lessons. I knew of nothing to stop me from winning fame and fortune on the stage. I was even now assembling my cargo, pretty tricks and turns, prancings, bows, and postures. I thought of him again. I thought to my great joy that by crossing the grass I could take him by surprise. It was a correct assumption, I thought, with a surge of my soul. I could not hear what he was saying. I tried to disguise my voice. I watched the furious assault of the wind. I presented myself in a brown velvet frock, remarkably quaint and demure. I did not hear him above the roar of the storm. I had no choice but to retire with all the dignity I could muster. I opened the letter in wild hope and terror. I turned away. 3. I had rehearsed in costume the 2 dances I had chosen. I watched the audience assembling. I wanted to be a heroine. I do not know why I am so sad. When I danced unsmiling, the violence of the dance became strangely dramatic. I was conscious of danger, but exhilarated by it. I came on the stage in a dead silence. I was doomed to defeat. I responded with furious hunger. I became frightened by its force. I knew the play well, yet I remained conscious of the enemy. I was alive without compromise. I knew myself. I stood still in the sudden silence. I answered. 4. I wanted a great adventure. I had not fulfilled the promise. I could not control the passage. I must be temperate in all things. Because I hung on his words, his instruction was etched in my brain. He said I was a blank page to write on, and truly, he wrote beautifully. My own language became immensely enriched. I was widely read. I became quite fluent in this most delightful of all European tongues. I felt vaguely disturbed. I had the curious illusion of a dual role in a drama just beginning to unfold. I did not pay much attention to what he was saying. I no longer walked as bold or felt so keenly alive. I forgot him and myself. I had lost Lola in the misty mirror of the past. I don't believe in ghosts. I could not keep from crying. I confessed. I stopped, my heart fainting. I gave him my best smile and bow. 5. I went quickly to shore. I could not help but go. Very rarely had I experienced such exultation on any stage. I had so much to tell him. I would like to tell him what no book could. I watched through a peephole in the curtain the theater swiftly fill. I had gone in search of him. I intended to strike. I became the central figure of a sequence of dramatic action. I revealed my desire. My mind and heart had been occupied and my imagination stirred. I was more in love with life than ever before. I was involved with the moon and all her comings and goings, her waxings and wanings. I danced better than before. I did not know what path my mind was taking. I was greatly proud of this composition. It did not seem to me a faded, fixed design, but one forever weaving. I dared perform it under only the most favorable conditions. It was a habit of my mind to take flights of fancy when balked by a hard fact. I had only to tell a plausible story. I know I am woman. I'm afraid that evil has the last laugh. Knowing that, I know more, that woman's heart still beats, and as long as it does, good won't die. I'm cold inside. In a moment, I had forgotten what I had said. The remembered voice appeared to have resonance. I recaptured every accent. The horrid story I had told myself might be true. I realized the words were not the same, and when resounded in my ear, the voice was slightly different, only the tone was identical. Even now, I could hardly believe my ears. I went downstairs and into the parlor. I put on a pretty dress. I thought of the night. What was I seeking? I drew a deep breath. I waited. 6. I was not ready to leave this scene. I went out of the house into the silvery light. I had not expected an adventure of this scope. I wondered why I had ever been confused. I had one more question to ask. I was intensely alert. I loved the breath in my lungs and the sparkling streams in my veins. I had been fated to go there. Perhaps I had never been as beautiful as today. I felt much more free. I walked on foamy rugs toward a rosewood desk. I had never before been forced to put the matter into words. I dared not, lest my voice tell too much. Even as a child, I was committed to becoming an adventuress. I may be lucky to escape with my life. I could hardly speak. I moved into the opening. I felt intensely alive. I was myself and no shadow of anyone else. I wanted to have thrilling adventures. I suppose I wanted to kill dragons. I'm afraid of the guillotine. Not the kind that chops off people's heads, but that shreds their hearts. With a violent movement, I broke free from his embrace. Whatever his passion was, I must escape from it. I must invent an excuse. I started to turn away, then faced him again. I sensed great defeat. I had been wounded in some deep way. There was a bleak spot in my heart. I was able to control my voice. I'd fight it to the last. The curtain rose on the last act, but I could only watch it, not live it. The solution to that mystery I did not know. I was fully resolved. It was a good thing I had been able to control my shameless heart. I knew I must not turn back. Still, I did not speak. I wanted you to give me rapture and the strength to go on alone. I could not believe what I had seen in the wild of the storm. 7. I had been an outlaw in the throes of summer madness. By this reality, I had broken with my dreams. I gave him what could never be written, an almost perfect imitation. I did not speak with words. I would do penance for the present hollow in my heart and the cracked ring of my voice. The moon and I had reached our fullness and begun to wane. I did not wholly understand it, but I felt its truth. I would find Lola again. A wave of icy terror broke over me, stifling my heart. I was trying to cast it off so I could realize my own identity in time and place. He envisions me in some great role of the drama of his life. I was weeping as I had never wept before. I was ready now. I felt an artery pulsing in my throat. I looked in the mirror. I was entirely reasonable. I would be starting soon up a steep path to some great fulfillment. I laughed jubilantly. I had been most demure. My name was Lola. I would slay many more dragons. I was going to be a countess. Long ago, I had been a priestess. I defied Kali and her ministers and manifestations in earth and hell. I had begun to realize the existence of an invisible foe. Suddenly, I was neither frightened nor ashamed. Thank you.